What's your favorite part of munching on a brain?
It's probably got to be how soft it is. Usually the blood squirt out there.
I got you. I
That's me.
really appreciate that the texture of a brain is like kind of like biting into a meatball, but
Oh
you
yeah,
also get those spaghetti strands in it. Like those nice
yeah.
fibers
And
and
then you get into the gray matter.
yeah. I particularly find the neuron portion of the brain to be my favorite, just because um, there's a lot of fiber in neurons, and I feel like the next day I always have just a really good poop after digesting like a brain or two.
Gotta get that fiber in.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's part of a good cornerstone of any diet is a good human brain.
Oh yeah.
Brains.
Sup,
What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the expLOREation podcast.
sup?
If you didn't catch our drift from the intro, today we're going to have a little zombie chat.
Oh yeah.
So, we did some preparing for this episode, maybe a little bit too much preparing, but we watched a couple of our favorite zombie movies. We've been playing some zombie games and things of that nature, and we've just been surrounding ourselves with the zombie media. So, I want to start off this podcast by talking about some of the characteristics of a good zombie movie. And I feel like most zombie movies encompass most or all of these characteristics in order for it to be, in my opinion, or in our opinion, I should say, a good comprehensive zombie film. So, first of all, we start off with an expendable cast. The thing with an expendable cast is that some zombie movies make you care. Others really don't. They don't.
Some of them.
Yeah, some of them. Keyword here. They throw these characters at you, kind of, force them upon you as any zombie movie does, and then slowly over time, as the movie progresses, you kind of maybe sort of get attached, depending on the movie, depending on the characters,
It all
right?
depends. Yep.
But the main key point to take away here is it's a zombie movie and it's an expendable cast. So most, if not all, of your characters are going to be dead at the end. Yada yada yada.
Yeah.
Next one, we got zombie rules. You
Yeah,
want to talk to me about zombie rules?
Yeah. So you have an expendable cast. So these, expendable casts have to talk about zombie rules. And these are rules that technically are followed by the zombies. And this usually stems from like zombies dying to headshots, zombies can't swim, zombies are flammable, and all that other good jazz.
Yeah, it varies from movie to movie, as with most of these points do, but there's some sort of logic to the supernatural, if that makes any sense in this instance, that the cast finds out and or we learn through the development of the movie.
Yeah.
The next one, gratuitous blood. I think that's the biggest kind of appeal behind a zombie movie. You go into a zombie movie because you want to see blood, because you want to see guts, and I think a lot of accomplished movies kind of display this in one manner or another.
Give me blood.
Give me blood, exactly.
Yeah. And then the next one would be the feeling of hopelessness. So you have these survivors, they're obviously outnumbered, they have all these zombies around them, which leads to killing turned family and friends, since the zombies are obviously going to have to get them at some point due to the expendable casts. That feeling of what's next. Yeah, you hunker down in some sort of mall or a hut or a gun shop, but
That's a little hint to what movies we watched.
yeah,
But yeah, it's the idea of, what if we conquer this situation? Then what? Because if the whole world's infested, you're kind of SOL in this situation.
yeah, which ties into them always being on the run, since again you can't really stay in one position, so you have to continue moving and moving because those zombies can smell.
Oh, yeah, they can sniff you out. And that's kind of the driving force behind a lot of these movies where you can't stay stagnant in one place for too long because you're going to run out of resources, you're going to run out of room. The place is eventually going to get overridden, overtaken. There we go. That's the word I was
There
looking
you
for.
go.
All right, so I know this is kind of a freeform genre. Zombie movies get away with a lot, but there's one more thing I want to kind of cover, and this is the general format that we came up with for a zombie movie.
Each
And
zombie movie follows this format, at least from what we've seen.
yeah, it's a pretty popular thing, and we were pretty loose with our stages here. So if you find like some discrepancies with the way you categorize these stages, by all means, feel free to let us know. But
Yeah.
we have 6 big stages that we kind of divide the movie into, and the first one is the discovery/panic stage. And so these characters are introduced into the initial zombies. They're kind of tossed into the craze, and they're like, "What's going on?" Blah blah blah. And then these zombies start munching on some brains,
Yep.
and the blood starts, and they're panicking, and they don't know what to do. So this is the kind of phase where, in the beginning of the movie, where you see people are going crazy, right? That's why we dubbed it the panic stage, where there's that initial killing, there's that introduction to the zombie world, and they kind of start to get the feel of we got to figure something out.
Yep. Which then leads into the rendezvous stage. Usually in these zombie movies, the main character or any other side characters tend to meet up, and they at this point have a short-term survivability goal, which means okay, we got to get to this location, we got to watch out for these zombies, we got to somehow make it through these first couple of hours of initial contact with these guys.
Yeah, absolutely. Grouping up is really important. It could also be super detrimental in a zombie movie. But we get to stage 3. So this is part of the movie where our cast is familiar with the setup and the situation that they're in. And they start kind of concocting a long-term survivability plan, whether that be, hey, we got to get to X town because rumors said it's not infested, or hey, we got to get here, hey, we got to get there, hey, maybe we got to burn all these zombie corpses and try to rebuild humanity, blah blah blah.
Yep.
Whatever that plan may be, it's usually because our cast notices something new or interesting, or maybe something they didn't notice about the zombies that were there originally. Now, this isn't the case for all zombie movies. However, I felt like it was important to include, because a lot of times, relating back to zombie logic, zombies follow some sort of rules, whether that be they can't swim, this or that, whatever it may be. If that is present, then the characters will notice it, and they'll
Yeah.
start to kind of take advantage of the situation, if that makes sense.
Yeah, which leads into the acceptance stage. At this point, the main cast knows that they're pretty much screwed, so they start to kind of form back into their everyday routines. They start preparing for their bigger plan on how to get the hell out of that place, wherever they're hunkered down. And they need to realize, at this point, they realize they need to confront these guys because they're hungry, they want brains, and they're going to come after them, one way or another.
Yeah, it's time to nut up or shut up in stage 4.
Yeah.
Stage 5 is the execution phase. So this is kind of the climax of the movie. So we get the cast and crew to go out back into the zombie world, and in this stage, you usually see a zombie killing montage, which is always fun.
Yep.
You see the loss of people, so you get the drop of cast members. Your numbers are going to dwindle, and with that comes the downfall of the quote unquote acceptance high. So our characters, explaining this point, our characters, when they come to terms that, hey, we're in the zombie world, and they kind of grasp the reality of the situation, they're like, hey, we got to do something, blah, blah, blah. They get this kind of like false confidence in them,
Yep.
whether that be momentary, whether that be long-term, blah, blah, blah. They realize they have to do something.
Yeah,
Well,
think
when
they're
they get
invincible.
back out into the fray after being shut out or shut in for so long, they realize exactly how bad it was in stage 1, which is the discovery panic stage.
Yeah.
And of course, our 6th stage.
It's the conclusion stage. Now, with the conclusion, with these zombie movies, it's very malleable. So you have, at least from what I've seen, at least 4 different conclusions. So you have the good ending, where it's everything goes peachy. They execute the big plan perfectly. Some lives might have been lost, important or not important, but at the end of the day, they got through it and they're all fine. Now, the next one, from what I've seen, is obviously the bad ending. Everybody gets fucked. Either the important people die, or pretty much everyone dies, and the feeling of hopelessness is back in the fray. And then you have the good ending, where it's bad. Which usually it's like, oh yeah, we made it, but
We're fine.
they didn't. Yeah, we're
Surprise.
fine. Surprise, more zombies, and obviously then you have the comedic endings. But with these zombie movies, you have to realize they can pretty much do whatever they want with the ending at this point.
These are kind of the big 4 that
We've seen a lot.
that we've seen are pretty common, but you always get those kind of weird in between gray ones, kind of how Greg talked about, that you get the initial good phase with the bad follow up, whatever it may be. And that's kind of the beauty of the zombie genre as a whole, is that you have a lot to work with, and you can end the movie or medium any which way you want it to.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, I don't think there's been a terrible zombie movie ending that I remember. Like, not so bad to the point where I like hate it and I'm like disgusted by it,
Yeah.
Maybe like good disgust, like blood and guts.
Yeah.
But so those were kind of the stages. Let's talk about our zombie timeline that we came up with.
Yep.
So we have this first wave of zombies that we're going to dub the old school zombies. And this ran from roughly 1929 to 1960. And of course, this is our rough approximation. So walk me through this. Let's talk a little bit about zombism and voodoo. So zombism originally stemmed from voodoo, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Right.
Run me through what we found. We got a little excerpt from a book called Encyclopedia Horrifica by a man called Joshua Gee.
Right. So he stated that although two official languages in IET are Creole and French, you don't have to learn either one of these to speak zombie. Some of the useful terms are a zombie zutil, is the name for a victim confined to an urban workshop. A zombie Jardin tends to his master's garden, which might be an okay summer job if it weren't for the part about feeling half dead. To cure a zombie, you'll need to turn him or her into a zombie gaiti. How Haitian folklore recommends feeding salt to the victim, but scientists disagree. There is no reason to believe that salt works as an antidote for alleged zombie poisonings. Our best advice: avoid becoming a zombie to begin with.
Yeah, absolutely. And that, again, that book is called Encyclopedia Horrifica by a man named Joshua Gee. Check that out if you're into the supernatural and stuff.
That's great.
And that was a little excerpt. This book's pretty long. So I think the key thing to remember about these old school zombies is at least when they were introduced into mainstream media, they were portrayed as kind of these mindless husks.
Yeah.
They were just kind of walking about. Excuse me. A couple characteristics: very slow,
Oh, yeah.
sometimes very stupid, and they work on primal instincts.
Sometimes they're alive, sometimes they're dead, depending on the whole voodooism.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think it's important to note George Romero and the term zombie. So, fun fact, he kind of coined the term zombie, because zombism was a thing, but the term zombie hasn't really been mainstream until he kind of got into the medium. And he could have, by all means, copyrighted that term, but he chose not to. And so that spawned the quote unquote zombie genre, because otherwise you'd have to do infected or, whatever it may be, right?
Yeah.
And Romero's zombies kind of laid the foundation for the zombie genre, because a lot of what we see now was based on his interpretation of this stuff. He did it very well, and he's one of the more renowned zombie filmmakers.
Legend.
Yeah, legends, honestly, at this point. And I think the main thing here was that we have a large quantity of zombies versus quality. And we'll get into what quality means later. But the key thing here is that they're slow, they're constantly on the pursuit, and they're just oblivious to everything. The only thing they care about is munching on your head.
Yep.
And that's kind of our definition of the classical or old school zombies. And we got a couple of examples. We got Night of the Living Dead, which is the
Classic movie.
arguably the biggest zombie movie ever. If you're a zombie head and you haven't seen this, by all means, please check it out.
It's great.
And the first movie to ever depict zombies as a reanimated corpse was a movie by the title of White Zombie. And that's kind of what we have for this. This next stage, we're coining proto-zombies, because here is where we start to see a lot of creativity and ingenuity in this genre. And this, again, these are rough timelines, so if if we miss a movie, don't kill us.
Yeah.
But we approximated this from the 1980s to roughly the 1990s, late 90s. And so let's chat a little bit about these proto-zombies. So some of the characteristics off the top of your head.
So with the proto-zombies, at this point you have the departure from voodoo. These zombies are technically created, usually dealing with some sort of super secret military experiment. And at this point, since with voodoo zombies, you have some of them are living. These zombies are always going to be undead.
Yeah.
And sometimes a headshot kills them, sometimes it doesn't. But these zombies are extremely slow. They're shambling, they're rotting. Usually they're missing limbs, and pretty much you've seen these in Resident Evil and movies such as Return of the Living Dead.
Yeah, so these are kind of true undead corpses,
Yeah.
and this is the departure from voodooism, whereas somebody is under some sort of influence or spell.
Right.
Key term magic being there, whereas this is the return, like, hey, they were dead and now they're back.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where we start seeing interesting things. So a lot of these movies cater to kind of the unsuspecting youth, where it's a young group of friends and they have no idea what they get into. They get involved with all sorts of crazy stuff, and they're kind of stuck in this zombie world. We see that a lot, especially with Return of the Living Dead, which we're going to chat a little bit about.
Yeah.
But it's important to note that when these movies were cranked out in the 1980s and 1990s, the kids going out to see them were these kids' age. So that was kind of audience inclusion and audience insertion, where you could go out late at night, and if you were like in front of a spooky cemetery, you're like, man, what if these corpses come up and start like chasing us or something?
Time to party.
It was kind of that mentality where they wanted you to take that effect home with you.
Yeah.
So another big characteristic of proto-zombies is this is where we saw the introduction of variants.
Right.
Some more prominent than others, but this was where the variant zombie, whatever that may be, there was a new one. So no longer do you have sort of these shambling husks of people. You have crazy things, like you have the tar zombie in Return of the Living Dead.
Yep.
You have the talking zombies, also Return of the Living Dead and a couple of others.
Yep.
Animal zombies, a popular example. I believe that's still being used in mainstream zombie movies today.
Resident Evil was the first one since you had the zombie dogs.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then Resident Evil also included a bunch of other variants. So you have, the Tyrant, the big baddie, what usually wielding a rocket launcher, has some super creepy ass claw. And then you also have the Lickers with the giant
Terrifying.
tongues, completely terrifying. But yeah, you start seeing a lot more variants with this.
Cool.
So
So we watched a movie from this kind of proto
zombie
zombie
era,
era,
yeah.
and so we chose.
Return of the Living
Yeah,
Dead,
Greg chose that because that's your favorite zombie movie,
right?
and I chose mine. We'll get into the third wave of zombie movies later. But tell me your experience with this movie, man. How many times have you seen it? What are your feelings on it?
So this is probably going to be that was probably my fourth time seeing that movie, and overall, I mean, it has the characteristics of a zombie movie. I like it a lot since it kind of throws that comedy aspect to an extent, and also what I like about this movie is that it kind of I guess twists and turns that the whole zombie rule set, because one of the zombie rules is that, okay, to kill the zombie you have to shoot him in the head, but it's not the case with Return of the Living Dead. The only way to completely actually destroy these zombies would be to burn the whole body, which I love. It completely throws off the characters, and it kind of increases that whole hopelessness feel. And plus the cast is just hilarious. You have that 80s vibe. These teens they just want to party. They end up in the graveyard, and then the shit starts kicking off. So they have to find a way to handle all that.
If hanging out and partying in a graveyard isn't the most 1980s thing I've heard, I don't know what is.
Yeah.
So I've seen this movie before, not anytime recently, and I'm kind of glad we rewatched it. By no means is this my favorite zombie movie, and we'll get into that later. But it was a good rewatch. Let me throw it out there. I noticed a lot more things this time around because, well, we were looking for them, if we're being honest here, right? I think the main appeal behind Return of the Living Dead is both the horror comedy aspect, and you get a lot of that with George Romero. He does some interesting things with the zombies, as we've mentioned before. I like the burning aspect because no longer is a zombie like a one headshot kill type of deal. It's no, you remove that accessibility from destroying something, and you make it that much harder because how many corpses can you possibly burn at once, right?
Exactly. Yep.
Without the other ones like overrunning you. And I thought it was really interesting because that's kind of a loophole in itself. Because when they cremated that initial zombie, rain came down like acidic rain, and it resurrected a lot more bodies from the graveyards. And I thought that was a nice little catch because, yeah, you have a way out, but it's not perfect by any means.
Yeah.
And it makes sense within the zombie world and nature itself, right? Well, maybe not the undead part.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love the cast. They're really likable, some more than others. And man, it was just a good rewatch. I think a lot of the effects still hold up to today, and it's a very good, narratively strong zombie movie. Another thing I enjoyed was that they included the zombie learning program in this movie, is what we're gonna call it.
Yeah.
You wanna talk to me about this zombie learning program
Um.
with the ambulances?
Oh yeah. So in this movie, I liked it a lot about this was the zombies actually somewhat are sentient. So in one of the scenes, the zombies munching on a ambulance driver, the paramedic's brain, and he hears the intercom, asking where that ambulance went. It's dispatch, and that zombie like takes the intercom and actually starts speaking, and it says, "Oh, we need more paramedics. Send more paramedics." And I like this a lot because once the paramedics actually came, then the zombies would swarm. It's sort of like they had a plan. They actually understood like what they're doing, which is why I like this movie a lot.
In addition to that kind of sort of sentience, there's a scene in the movie where they hanker down a zombie on an operating table, right?
Oh yeah, I love this part.
And so it starts talking to him, and the characters kind of realize that, holy crap, they're sentient. And they ask it, like, why do you eat brains? And the zombie replies, because it soothes the pain, even though it's only
The
momentarily.
pain of being dead.
Yeah, the pain of being dead.
Yeah.
And I thought that was pretty interesting because for once we get an actual explanation as to why they're on the hunt for brains,
Yeah.
And I thought that was pretty cool. I love this sort of logical steps that George Romero took. Well, they need a reason. Well, they need this. Or they need that. It's a very kind of tightly knit movie,
Yep.
in my opinion. But I thought it was a total fun rewatch, and I'd argue that this is one of the most definitive movies of this kind of proto-zombie era. Of course, we all have our favorites, and Resident Evil is also a phenomenal example. The game's not the movie, of course. But if you're looking for a good proto-zombie experience to see exactly what we're talking about, Return of the Living Dead is by all means the way to go.
Plus, you get to see Tarman, which is probably one of my more favorite zombies. With that
Why
pimp
is
walk.
he your favorite zombie variant?
Because he has that pimp walk that it's hilarious. If you actually see him walk, he has this like weird shamble, and he's just so grotesque and disgusting. And I don't know, man. Like Tarman's just one of those zombies that sticks out to me. He's actually again the whole sentient part when that I forgot, I don't remember the girl's name, but she locks herself in the closet. Tarman actually takes a hook, to actually open up the closet door and starts cranking away, and just I just love that guy.
Yeah, Tarman had a very
It's brief.
recognizable appearance, I should say.
Yeah.
And I thought he was interesting enough. He was really grotesque, man. That flesh on him, that black flesh and the goop dripping off was nasty.
Pip walk.
Yeah. So he was fun. But let's get into the modern day zombies. So we classified this from the year 2000 until now.
Yep.
So a couple of these characteristics that we're going to go over. A lot of the times you see a sort of twist on this whole undead / infected thing. You see sometimes like a rabies or agrovirus. And a prime example of this would be 28 Days Later. So now we're kind of back to that OG thought process where it doesn't necessarily have to be Night of the Living Dead keyword here, right?
Right.
You have sort of this twist and turn, and I think with a lot of the information and a lot of stuff going on now, I think this disease factor adds a sense of reality to a zombie threat, because how believable is the Living Dead? Not that believable. But what if there was a virus out there like rabies that turns you into a complete madman?
One thing I like about 28 Days Later is that they kind of stem from the old, like, okay, to become a zombie, you have to get bitten. I believe in 28 Days Later, it could actually be, you could actually be infected, because they had that one scene where the guy was looking up and the drop of zombie blood went in his eye.
Yeah,
and
if you
he
come in
became-
contact with the blood.
Yeah, I like that a lot. It amplifies the virus factor and just, throws old things.
Yeah, transmission by blood is pretty big.
Throws old thing out the window.
Another characteristic, super violent zombies. This is probably my favorite aspect of modern day zombies, because you get this massive amounts of rage and aggression and all these sort of creative kills that you get out of being super violent zombies. And I think that allows for a lot of creativity and a lot of blood and guts. And that's what I'm coming in for a zombie movie. I want that aspect. Another thing, fast and strong, could be inclusive or exclusive, depending on the movie. You kind of walk away from this sort of shambling husk that we talked about in OG Zombies, and that we kind of sort of a little bit covered in these proto zombies. A lot of these times, these modern zombies are fast and they will sprint at you, and it is terrifying because, granted, we could hop in a car and outdrive maybe like Return of the Living Dead or whatever it may be, those original old school zombies. We can outdrive them. If we drive far enough, we'll get away. But this sprinter aspect of the zombie is just so horrifying to me.
That'll keep up with the car.
Yeah, that'll keep up with the car, if not outrun it, and then
And
you're
the
screwed.
conversation with them with the window.
Yeah, it's just this crazy sort of fear factor added to it, and I love it. In addition to that, some of these zombies are super strong. Like I said, depends on the movie, but you got guys tossing around tanks. You got guys lifting open doors, like garage doors type of stuff.
Yeah.
And that just adds to the scariness of it, because being outnumbered is one thing, but being outnumbered and outgunned is a totally different situation, So we kind of have a bigger emphasis on the variant types in the modern day zombies. We can talk about this extensively, but it follows sort of the same proto-zombie stuff, where a lot of these modern day movies and games are saying, hey, well, regular zombies aren't scary enough. Here's a big guy coming at you. Be prepared.
Yeah.
So here's sort of where this relates to proto-zombies. There's a lot of questionable motives in modern day zombie films.
Yeah.
Whether that be from creation to inspiration, whatever it may be. These zombies were created for some sort of reason. A lot of the times we see kind of the super soldier stuff, where in Resident Evil they tried to make the perfect like war soldier, or they tried to make some sort of like virus warfare, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And to a political or military advantage was the initial creation of this. And we saw a little bit of that in Return of the Living Dead. Thus
A little bit.
Yeah, thus the proto, right?
Yeah.
But that was kind of the whole aspect change or the view change in modern day zombies, where, hey, these guys have a reason, a purpose, whatever it may be. They're out there because X and Y wanted so. And I think that's super fun. Let's go over some of these examples. So Dawn of the Dead, the 2005 remake specifically, because Dawn of the Dead was an OG Romero film, and that kind of falls into the old school zombie criteria.
Yep.
We watched this, and we're going to have a little movie discussion. I think the big prominent one that a lot of our listeners might have played or at least seen footage of is Left 4 Dead 1 and 2. Super heavy emphasis on variant types. We got the Witch, the Spitter, the Charger, the Tank, the Hunter, the Smoker, and they kind of work. You see how they fit into this zombie ecosystem. We got World War Z, where they're zombies at base level, but they're blind, right? They
Yeah,
can only
they're
see by
blind
hearing.
and they can only hear wherever the survivors are. Plus, they have that whole swarm mentality, so they can like scale walls and whatnot,
Yeah,
super fast
absolutely
and
terrifying, like ants.
super aggressive and super fast. And then the final one would be Dying Light. Now, Dying Light actually has, your typical, you have the Shamblers, and then you have the Infected. One thing I like about the Infected is that these are recently turned humans. So in the game, actually, if you end up trying to whack one of them, they'll actually start speaking in English to you, just like stop or they'll start pleading for help. And then you have the typical, toes, the big guys, etc., etc., etc. But one thing what I like about Dying Light and what they did was with the volatiles. And if you haven't played Dying Light before, the volatiles you only encounter at night, and these are these super hyper aggressive zombies, and they're completely disgusting and grotesque. They don't even their jaws like ripped off from the middle. They have like mandibles now. The rib cages see through. And they just chase your ass down like throughout the night. And their only weakness is actually UV light, which is why they only come out at night. And I just feel like the volatiles would be probably the last. I mean, there's probably other zombie variants that people can actually come out with, but the volatiles were at least one of the last zombie variants that actually came out. That were sort of unique, and I just love how they pull it off. The whole how they're created from this blue mist from a like you said, the military experiment. And the thing about that is that with volatiles, if you actually, they have two stages. So if you inhale the mist, then they become mindless, zombies that they just hunt and they just go off of basic instinct. But if you actually drink that the liquid that they're spraying around, you actually become a sentient volatile, which means they actually think, they actually know what they're doing, and they actually have the ability at this point to walk around at daytime. So that's why I like how the volatiles actually turned out in Dying Light. I feel like it's really unique.
Yeah, arguably one of the more interesting variant types because when you look at people like the smoker, I'll give you one guess where the smoker stemmed from. What kind of human?
Yeah.
Yeah, chain smoker, right? Or the charger. No hints needed there. I just think that a lot of care went into creating these volatiles and a lot of the other kind of variants in Dying Light, and I think that's super cool because we stated earlier that the zombie genre is very malleable. So let's talk a little bit about Dawn of the Dead. So this is arguably one of my favorite zombie movies, and the first time I saw this, I saw it when it came out in 2005, and I was absolutely terrified. I was super young, and it came to the point where I saw the movie on TV, and I would be like staring out my window, and I'd be like, "Holy shit, they're coming!" It'd be like the streets would be completely empty, and I'm like, "They're fucking waiting for me somewhere." I know the moment I go outside, I'm gonna get mauled and eaten. Have you seen this movie before, prior to our
I
viewing for the podcast?
I have seen it once, and I was young, and like you said, it scared the shit out of me. I don't, I wasn't actually looking out my window, thinking, "Oh my god, they're coming," but it kind of put that fear aspect of, you know, these zombies. Yeah, they're shamblers, but some of them actually, run at high speed. So
Most of them do, yeah.
yeah, most of them actually run at high speed. So yeah, when the first time when I saw this movie, I was, actually terrified of this actually happening. Put that fear factor in there.
Yeah, I thought it was a nice little twist, remake of the original, and I think they did a really nice job with modernizing the zombie. A couple
Yeah.
things I really enjoy about the movie was that, well, there's a gratuitous blood, and like I stated earlier, that's what I come into a zombie movie for. But also this kind of sense where it's these people locked in a mall, and they kind of sort of have some fun here and there. But at the end of the day, there's this like overlooming threat of hopelessness and the zombie infection. As we learn, the cop in the movie is trying to get to another city. Well, sorry, bud, that city's overrun because these people just came from there. And it's this sort of weird power dynamic between all the characters when they're struggling within the mall.
I think it also has like one of the more, I don't want to say because you like your grotesqueness, you like your blood, but this one scene that haunts me is that whole like baby being born, the zombie baby being born. That literally scarred me for life on the first time I saw it, and it's probably one of the more like out there scenes in any I don't want to say in any movie this in modern day, but when it first came out, it was like, oh, big, what the fuck is going on
No,
factor.
yeah, absolutely. They took a lot of kind of creative liberties with it, and I think that it paid off in the long run because what other movie off the top of your head has zombie babies in it?
Yeah.
I'm sure there's a couple out there, but I can't name any right now.
Uh,
I think it did a lot of things well, and I thoroughly enjoy the movie. This is probably, I don't know, maybe my sixth or so watch. The appeal behind this movie is that one, it's in Milwaukee. It's like a couple hour drive away from us, so that's super terrifying.
Yeah.
But it takes this suburban housewife slash nurse and it throws her into this crazy environment. Her kid's infected, her husband's infected, and now she has to survive with essentially at the end of the day, like medical expertise. And we only see it used in the movie a handful of times. and you have this crazy big concocted plan where it says, "Hey, we need to get out of this mall. We need to get on this island because they learned that the zombies can't swim." Relating back to the zombie logic, right? They become twitchers as soon as they hit the water. And if you've seen the movie all the way through into the credit scene, you see that they get to the island and the island's already overrun.
Yep.
It's just a total crap show, and I really appreciate that. I really appreciate that. So let's talk zombie movies as other genres. So we've seen a couple of these. We've seen all of these actually, I believe.
Yeah.
Let's talk zombie comedy. So we have two kind of bigger ones. We have Zombieland and Shaun of the Dead.
Yeah.
What do you want to chat about these movies?
I feel like just Zombieland and how, because this was part of like more of a modern day zombie movie. I really like how they had that whole zombie rule aspect. Where you follow each and every one of the zombie rules to actually
The
survive.
rules to survival he's referring.
Yeah, the rules to survival, and it took zombies, which are already like terrifying enough, and then just kind of added like a dash of comedy to it. It also introduced one of the more scary zombies, which would be the clown zombie, which is completely fucking terrifying.
Terrifying,
Yeah. And then you had Shaun of the Dead, and if you wanted to touch points on like
Yeah, so Shaun of the Dead is a pretty cheeky comedy by Simon Pegg and Nick Frost. And it takes these buddies and kind of tosses them into the middle of a zombie infestation in England. And I think what this movie did really well is that it keeps its demeanor and it keeps us calm throughout the movie between Simon Pegg and Nick Frost. And I think they have a phenomenal dynamic in this sort of movie. The big appeal for me is that their whole plan is, hey, let's get to let's get to the bar, have a pint, and just wait for this whole thing to blow over.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what they do. And nobody is taking this situation seriously or as seriously as it should be taken, aside from Simon Pegg's girlfriend at the time, or ex-girlfriend, we should say, right?
Yeah.
And I think the beauty of this is that it adds this layer of nonchalantness and almost like relaxation to a genre that should have you tense at all points.
Yeah.
And I think it does that really well in a lot of its aspects through its like dry, flat comedy, through some of the jokes like dogs can't look up, or the whole gun scene where nobody knows how to fire a gun. And it's like, why would it be loaded if it's hanging in a bar? Blah, 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 whatever,
When
right?
Simon's actually like nonchalantly going to the grocery store to pick up.
Yeah, and the
something.
zombie's still there.
Yeah.
Absolutely
He just doesn't
movie.
even know.
Absolutely fun, phenomenal movie by a phenomenal director. Check that out. Lollipop Chainsaw, enlighten me.
Yeah. So this is a game that took zombies and completely went over the top with it. Now, if you're not familiar with Lollipop Chainsaw, it is a hack and slash game where you play as a cheerleader, in her cheerleading outfit, and she runs around with a chainsaw and just goes to town on these zombies. And the whole journey that she's going through. She has her boyfriend's head attached to her skirt. And the player goes around killing these zombies, and the whole like premise is that you have to rescue your classmates from this because you're at her school from the zombie outbreak. And with her attached boyfriend's head, you can actually slap his head on a zombie body, and you can do these special attacks with him. Overall, it's just a fun little spin on the zombie genre, very lighthearted, and it's over the top, and I love it. I
Sure.
played it like once or twice, so.
Speaking about over the top, I think with modern zombie movies, we kind of got to talk about Dead Snow.
Oh man.
Dead Snow is I believe, Swedish or Finnish film. Don't
believe
quote me
it's
on that.
Swedish.
And it came out kind of amid the sort of Call of Duty Nazi zombie craze.
Yeah.
So this movie is exactly that. It is a Nazi zombie film. But what's really interesting about it is that these zombies don't follow your typical zombie mentality. Yeah, they're here for a reason, but it's maybe for something you'd see in a more classic monster movie, something like a mummy movie or like a witch movie, whatever that may be. So these tourists stumble upon a gold chest that was left there from the Nazi age, and they open up the gold, and that awakens the zombies. So the whole purpose of the zombies is to kind of go in and take back their stuff.
Yeah.
A lot of cool things about this movie. First and foremost, the kills are phenomenal. They take the most interesting route. They don't munch. They don't eat you. They like disembowel you. They like tear your limbs apart, and they're like genuinely horrifying. The makeup is really well done.
They
in
just
this
kill
movie.
you to kill you. They
Yeah.
don't care. They just want their gold.
We stated that the zombie genre is super malleable, and this movie is a prime example of that because at its foundation, at its core, is your typical zombie movie. It follows our format, it follows our characteristics, all that good stuff, but it takes a lot of fun twists and turns. Do you have a favorite kill from this movie by any chance?
I think my favorite kill would be, I think one of them is when the zombie's running at like one of the main characters, and she just like sidewinds him with the hammer and just completely knocks his block off. At least that was one of my favorite.
That was a good
kills.
one. That was in the
Yeah.
first Dead Snow.
Yeah, the first one.
I have kind of two in mind, and they're both from the first movie. The first one is when they catch one of the tourists on like a mountain slope, and like 5 zombies bum rush her, and they just tear all her limbs off.
Yeah.
I think that's a phenomenal scene. And then my other favorite one is when one of the dudes is running and he runs right into a tree, and there was like a tree branch sticking out, and he pierces his intestine, and so he keeps running, but his intestine's yanking out, and he falls off the cliff, and he's hanging by his intestine. I think that's so grotesque and so gnarly.
Yeah.
And then so Dead Snow 2
Oh.
takes this really cool horror format, this kind of bloodbath that we saw with Dead Snow 1, and it not only cranks that up to 11, it cranks literally everything else you could imagine up to 11. The gore, the comedy, the characters, the absurdness. So the Dead Snow 2 deals with resurrecting the Red Army
Yeah.
because one of the main characters, he obtains the Nazi general's
Right arm,
right arm.
which is the arm that's used to actually. I think he can actually create zombies and
Resurrect them, yeah.
resurrect the zombies and actually have them under his own will. Have them under his own will. And shit.
Personally, I like Dead Snow 1 a lot better because it's a lot simpler, but I understand the appeal behind Dead Snow 2
Yeah,
because
it's
it's
very
over
over
the
the
top
top.
and ridiculous. You have this
Completely over the
giant
top.
like zombie fight at the end between the Red Army and like the Nazis.
Yeah.
I think that was hilarious. Being brutally honest, it was to me more of a comedy action as opposed to like a horror thriller,
That ending still gets me.
Yeah, the ending is absolutely hilarious. Check out both those movies if you haven't seen them. We got to talk a little about honorary zombies and kind of the aspects of gaming culture and movie culture in which the zombie franchise is inspired. So one of the ones we got here is Dead Space and the Necromorphs.
Yep.
Necromorphs. Say that 5 times really fast. They're a race of space aliens at the end of the day, and they act very much like a zombie. They have a collective hive mind, and they work towards. I can't remember what the giant goal was at the end. I'm so terrible.
I
I stopped playing after 2.
I haven't played.
But
Dead Space
I
in
believe
years.
it's to absorb all the life force from a planet and
I
turn
think
that
so.
into the Necro Station, the Necro Moon, I believe, is
Yeah.
what it was called.
Something like that.
Pretty cool. Zombies in space. You can't go wrong with that. But speaking about zombies in space, we got the more notable one that we're way more familiar with.
Yeah. It's the Flood from Halo. Now, this they act like zombies in which the forms that they carry they're very mindless. They're all in their hive mind. This is more of like a parasite since they go in and they control human bodies or elites or whatever they want, and they just bum rush you. That's like one of the things from the zombie rules. You have that feeling of outnumberness whenever you're fighting them. But yeah, zombies from space. That's
Yeah,
what we
super
got.
fun. The big thing about the Flood, and I think the Halo lore kind of emphasizes this, is that they're never truly gone. They're always going to be somewhere, frozen away, underneath the ground, whatever it may be. You may have gotten rid of them on your planet or in your sector of the galaxy, but they're always kind of looming. And we covered a little bit with our Banished episode that there is a giant floating spacecraft with the infected on it.
Yep.
And we don't know what happened, whether they got eradicated or they took over the whole crew. And I think that's what I love about the Flood is that, yeah, maybe this immediate threat has been taken care of, but the whole purpose of the Halo rings was to get rid of the Flood at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And because through politics, through war, and all this crap that goes on in the Halo universe, it's just impossible to get rid of them. There's just so much crap going on. It's just so terrible.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about Zeds from Killing Floor.
Oh yeah. So the Zeds, they're not your typical zombie, since they're not necessarily dead. So the Zeds, they're created by Kevin, which is the CEO of Horizon Biotech.
What
And
a terrifying name.
Yeah.
Kevin.
Kevin. And he was hired by the government to create the perfect super soldier. Each Zeds are basically cloned and or man-made, and the only ones that weren't man-made were the bloats. Apparently that was due to humans taking the bloats are pretty much this giant, beefy zombie with pretty much barfs everywhere and everything. And that was created by side effects of a Horizon weight loss pill, thinking that they'll lose weight, but they actually won't. So then you have the other sides. You have the Skrakes, which they have a giant chainsaw, flesh pounds. They're supposed to be this ultimate super soldier. They have an adrenaline rush that makes them enrage, and they basically bum rush people and just pound them, to absolute pulp. The husks and then the clots and the crawlers, and these are basically all just bio experiments that went wrong. The reason why they were released was a couple of cheeky protesters thinking that they're doing human experiments and trapping humans into the labs. They actually release all these Zeds, and all hell breaks loose into London. and I like the Zeds because they have some sort of zombie aspects, since they're kind of mindless and whatnot, but they're way more powerful. They're way more dangerous,
And they're
and
alive.
they're alive. They're not dead. They're all clones of each other, and just part of this horrible experiment gone wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's important to note that the early 2000s set up this wave for a revival, and I want to talk a little bit about why the zombie revival happened. I think that when we came around to the proto-zombie era in the 80s and 90s, we saw some creative things going on, and that inspired movie directors, game developers, writers, things of that nature in the early 2000s. And so we got this kind of full frontal force of, hey, let's take a zombie and let's redefine it, or like, hey, let's take a zombie and be more creative with this aspect, whatever it may be, whether it be a variant, story plot, blah, 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 whatever, right? And I think that kind of, like Resident Evil and Return of the Living Dead, paved the way for all these people to just take creative liberties with the zombie. And I think that's super important to note because in like the 2010s, there was a honest to God full blown revival of this stuff.
Zombies were everywhere.
Yeah, zombies were everywhere. A couple of key points I noted down. I think there was enough rest in the genre that gave people enough time to kind of miss it. In a day and age where there's endless sequels to everything you can imagine and everything is a franchise owned by Disney, you kind of had these people who were involved in zombie movies that cared for it and they loved it, and you kind of got this feeling where they weren't just cranking them out to crank them out. They were cranking them out because they had an interesting story to tell, or they had an interesting vision.
Yeah.
And so you stop seeing this crazy wave of zombie movies every 6 months.
Yep.
2010s gave a hell of a lot of room for better effects and better makeup. You look at zombies now in something like Train to Busan or Dawn of the Dead or even The Walking Dead,
Yeah.
and compare that to something like
Return of the Living Dead.
Return of the Living Dead. Granted, those effects still hold up, but just look at the comparison. One is more grossly grotesque,
A lot more blood.
a lot more blood, a lot scarier, and it's just disgusting,
Yeah.
and that's phenomenal.
Yeah.
And then I think that in the proto zombie age leading into the 2000s, I think there was a lot of movie fatigue, and we're starting to see this now with like the superhero movies and like Star Wars. We'll get into that another day, but I think it's important to note that you still have your big boy monsters. You have Freddy Krueger, you have Jason, you have Michael, and those movies spawned a lot of sequels, a lot of terrible things that came with those sequels, right?
Yeah.
And so your audience eventually got tired of the man in the mask or the man in the dream chasing you around. And with movie fatigue, you're going to start to see different genres or different characters, monsters, whatever that may be, popping up again. And I think it was the perfect time because let's face it, when Jason X came out, we were like, no, I don't want any of that.
Yeah.
Even like the Freddy films, like towards the end, even at the halfway point, it was like, do we seriously need more? Blah blah blah. And they're still trying to resurrect those genres, and I think that this kind of audience fatigue really did pave the way. It gave room because people are like, well, I just saw a Jason film last year, I'm not going to go see one next year.
Yeah.
And then boom, zombies, they're like, hey man, we got something new, we got something fun, we got interesting. In addition to that, zombie movies are super easy to watch.
Yeah.
Granted, they're horror and thriller at their core. It's not really a commitment. There's no butchering your favorite character, your favorite monster, or taking a new creative liberty that's gonna upset a lot of the fans.
Yeah.
It's a zombie movie. There's
Yeah.
no commitment to it.
And those zombies are, you have these, Leatherface and Jason and whatnot. And each of them have the same thing. They always go after, whatever teenagers, and they have their sharp weapons, and etc. The zombies, they're extremely malleable. You can make them into fast zombies. You can have them into shamblers. They have different zombie rules. You can either kill them by headshot. You can do whatever you want. They're extremely easy to, what's the word I'm looking for?
They're interchangeable,
Yeah,
man. If you want to take a creative liberty with a zombie in your zombie movie, by all means do so.
Yeah.
Because we've seen it done plenty of times, and it's worked out most of those times. I
Gives
think the
room
only
for
exception is
uniqueness.
the zombie tiger from that one terrible zombie movie I can't remember the name of. But that being said, that's just the kind of approach that we have where, yeah, I've seen bad zombie movies, but simply because of the fact that I can't name it for you means that it didn't upset me like that. I can name you some terrible movies that I hate with a passion because they upset me so bad.
Yeah.
But a lot of these zombie movies fall under passable, and that's okay.
Yep.
So with this zombie influx and full-blown revival into 2010s, we got a lot of stuff that are non-movie zombie media. And we're going to talk about a little bit about these. So there's a game by Steve Jackson called Zombie Dice, which I own, in fact. Super fun. Pretty simple game. You're a zombie. You're trying to collect as many brains as you can. You roll the dice. These dice have brains on them, so green dice are the safest. You get the most brains out of them. Yellow dice are slightly more dangerous, and red dice are the most dangerous. And so your goal is to assemble as many brains as you can in one turn without getting shot or die, without killing your zombie. If your zombie's killed, you lose all those brains. And I think first to whatever amount, or highest total after X amount of turns wins. I think it captures that zombie aspect. I think there's a lot of risk and reward involved, depending on how cheeky you want to be and your luck of the dice. Super fun. Check that out.
Yep.
Now, we did on the Second City Kids podcast, which is my other podcast, we talk a lot about music. And I told Greg, I was like, hey, sit down and listen to the Zombie EP by The Devil Wears Prada. Because not only are they one of my all-time favorite bands, I think this piece of music is super kind of reflective upon the times and this whole zombie craze.
Yeah.
So walk me through it, man. You listen to it, what'd you think?
So the Zombie EP by Devil Wears Paradas, I thoroughly actually, I enjoyed the EP. One thing I noticed about it is that how it fits to the previous mentioned zombie stages, and each song actually kind of has
It reflects
like
upon it.
it reflects upon you. You have that feeling. So you start off with this hardcore rock, guitars,
Metalcore, buddy.
metalcore. Sorry. You start off strong, very loud. It kind of reflects the whole like discovery stage in which shit's going down. You have to like figure out what the hell's going on, and you move through the album. And each it tells like a story of like like a zombie apocalypse, and you have your highs and your lows. You have that point in time where I think the song's called what is it, Outnumbered,
Mm-hmm.
in which you have that feeling of hopelessness. The piano and the violin starts coming in. You hear those gunshots going off in the background, where you start thinking in the back of your head like, oh man, like I just
They're coming.
Yeah, they're coming. I just lost like say my dad, or this one guy that I started becoming good friends with, and you start having that feeling of hopelessness. And then as you progress through the EP, it starts to kick back up again, in which at that point you're going through with the final plan. The giant zombie killing montage is going on, and it's coming up to the conclusion, and it's just a phenomenal album, or an EP. I actually enjoyed it.
Yeah, I couldn't have summed it up better. I've known The Devil Wears Prada for quite some time now, and this is one of my favorite pieces by them. They also did a space EP. Maybe we'll cover that when we do some Star Wars talk or some space opera stuff. But yeah, so Greg's been getting into the grimy stuff. How'd you like it as a piece of music, though? Like looking aside from the zombie aspect,
As a piece of music.
as a piece of music, because they do the zombie stuff, they do their themed EPs very well.
Yeah.
But as a piece of music, do you think that it kind of what is the word I'm looking here? Did you want to stand up and kick a door down?
Oh yeah. Like I'd probably listen to that EP like before like hitting the gym or something like that. It gets you really hyped up.
Absolutely phenomenal. Again, that EP is the Zombie EP by The Devil Wears Prada. Check that out if you haven't already. If you're a zombie head, you're gonna love this stuff. And if you're a metal head, if you don't know what this is, I don't know what to tell
Yeah,
you.
the Greg thumb of approval.
Yeah, Greg thumb of approval. So in addition to all this stuff that we've mentioned, Marvel did a zombie comic line called Marvel Zombies. And I've read through all these. I think they're super fun. The reimagining of the characters as zombies gives this morally gray aspect to the whole Marvel universe. And I love it because everybody, as I've mentioned, everybody is a zombie. They're out for brains. They're out for something. They're out to survive, blah, blah, blah. And so Captain America isn't necessarily a good guy anymore. And I just love that nice twist on it. I think they did it very tastefully, and I think it was executed well.
Yeah.
And then we have the big one. In Call of Duty World at War, the endgame Easter egg was you played a round of Nazi zombies.
On Noctur and
Yeah,
Toten.
Noctur and Toten. So this kind of took the world by storm. This is supposed to be a fun little, like, hey, look, you finished the game kind of thing. And
Yeah.
it turned into a full-blown mode in Call of Duty. We've seen how far it's gone now. It's been 10 years since that came out, Think
Yeah.
about that. Well, probably more, actually, because it's 10 years since Kino came out. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
really?
let that sink in if you're a COD Zombies player.
Yeah.
But I think what COD Zombies contributed is that they got a lot of people interested back into the whole zombie aspect of this thing, because there was this drop off, and then who wasn't playing Call of Duty in the late 2000s, right?
Right, yeah.
Everybody and their mama was. And then when you discovered this and you're like, wow, I love this whole survivability aspect, they started giving us more and more. And those early zombie maps, I think, exemplify a lot of the stuff we love in a zombie media, where it's, you're outnumbered, you're outgunned, they just keep coming and keep coming and keep coming, and there's no quote unquote real end.
Yeah.
Until we get later into the series with all that
It's just
crazy
endless
stuff.
fun.
Yeah, we've actually been playing through the Zombie Chronicles on Black Ops 3, and I think I've been having a lot of fun. It's given me time to kind of reflect on this genre as a whole, and honestly, if it wasn't for Dawn of the Dead and Nazi zombies, I don't even know if we'd be making this podcast right now.
Yeah.
So, granted, you have your experiences and you have your thoughts with the Call of Duty line, but I think it's important to show their contribution to the media as a whole
Yep.
because they were 110% a part of that initial craze. Well, that revival craze, I should say.
I think that's where it started off.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about kind of the political aspect.
Right.
This is all you, buddy.
So, with that whole what is it, the zombie revival, and that whole drop off that was going on, I think one of the reasons, at least politically, as to why the zombie revival happened would be that we've been fighting a war for like what the last 10 years in Iraq, and people are just tired of seeing like actual humans being killed, and they're really kind of susceptible to like the violence of society, and even with the early horror movies like with Jason and all that, people that were being killed are living people in semi-grotesque ways, whether it's with a machete, and then you have Freddy with being killing people in their dreams. And the one thing that I guess people got tired of about was, again, the humans being killed. So they kind of wanted something else, to fill that void. And that's where the zombies came in, since zombies, they're creatures and they're not human. They have no political motive, and the only motive that they have is to survive. They don't discriminate, and they have no main purpose, and the only purpose that they have is to be killed. I think another couple of things would be that this ties into the worries about disease. Since at that time, the swine flu was big and bird flu, and it just kind of, with the zombies coming back, with the whole virus and whatnot, it started kind of getting people riled up again. And it also dug into, common fears, again, being disease, and then coming to terms with our own morality. Where at this point, it's, the end of the war, we've lost loved ones, we lost, our own lives, and at that point, we just don't want to see humans being killed anymore. We just want to see these, proto, I guess, humans, previous humans.
These humans that aren't humans.
Yeah, these creatures that just completely get blood shattered and blood everywhere and just want to eat brains. So that's where I think there's like another reason of why the revival happened.
Yeah, I think that was a lot of good reasoning there. And we'll get into the kind of morality of whether or not you should kill a zombie towards the end of this podcast.
Yeah.
But it was a very good observation, and I think there's some truth to it. This isn't a political podcast by any means, but
No.
if it relates to the topic and we can extrapolate some sort of reason or rhyme, by all means, we'll talk about it. So when we're talking zombies, honestly, when we're talking any kind of podcast that we've rolled so far, of course, I got to come in and I got to be like a condescending douche with my philosophy, right? So I want to talk a little bit about the philosophical zombie aspect of this medium. So what exactly is a philosophical zombie? Well, to start off with, they are exactly like us in every shape and way and action. But Descartes argued that there is something more to being a human. Look at an animal. They have a rational behavior and function on some of the same instincts we do. Philosophical zombies are an argument for the philosophy of the mind or consciousness, and its basic premise revolves around the idea that there is nothing it is like to be a zombie. Yeah, wrap your head around that statement. These philosophical zombies, or P-zombies, have in every sense all of our physical traits and abilities, but are lacking a conscience. Therefore, there would be no first-person experience in that world. A prime example of this would be if you stabbed a P-zombie, it would scream out in pain, but there would be no feeling on its behalf, no inward feeling. What do you think about that statement?
I'm decent into philosophy, but that pretty much just blew like whatever I had, about zombies.
Yeah, it's kind of a rough topic to comprehend. And if
Yeah.
you're listening to this and you're not following along, don't feel bad because I took a whole course on the philosophy of the mind. And this is one of those arguments where if you can conceive of it, it is possible that it exists somewhere out there.
Yeah.
Where I think the key thing to take away from here is that it is nothing there is nothing it is to be like a P zombie. And I probably butchered that really bad from what I said earlier. But in essence, the argument here is that there's something more to a human than just all the fleshy, meaty bits that make us up. And it is an argument for the consciousness, for materialism, for pride, for success, things of that nature. And I kind of wanted to include it because it relates back to that old school zombie where it may not be a slow, decrepit walker, but it is at the end of the day a mindless husk kind of roaming about. And if there's no inward feeling, or if there is nothing it is to be like a P zombie, then in essence you are also, by our definition, a zombie.
Right.
And I thought that was a fun little tidbit. If you want some more information on that, check it out. There's a lot of good resources out for this stuff and a lot more detail that I'm not going to go into. Let's get into the big one.
Morality of zombie killing.
Yeah, I misspelled this so grossly on our agenda. It's
Motsalu of Ombi Kilig.
yeah. So
Kiligi.
you wanted to toss this on here.
Yeah.
I thought it was interesting enough. This was kind of a last minute topic.
Yep.
Lay it on me.
So the morality of zombie killing. This is what I have cooked up. So first off, you have to define what a person is by law. Now, this is there's no clear-cut answer on what a person may be. I feel like this is a personal/political issue. So in my opinion, to be a person, you need to have need to be able to act, testify, and make decisions for themselves. In my opinion, zombies are human, but they're not people. They don't follow the traditional traits of personhood. And then you have these three giant traits which zombies fall under, but not one person themselves. They can't have all three of these traits, and that's not being able to be reasoned with. They're homicidal and they spread viruses. Now, a human can have one or two of these traits, but zombies have all three, which on a human threat level is unheard of. No person can have all three of these. And then you have to get into ethical self-defense and what threat a zombie poses. Now, these are the three, those are the three threats that, a zombie poses, as previously mentioned. Not one person can have, all three of those threats. Not killing a zombie would be like not attacking an army and that is threatening your existence. Think of like, say like if an alien army is attacking you, it's not like what they do to you, it's what we can do about it. No, there's no other recourse besides to kill back and just basically kill the zombies back. There's no other recourse that we can take. Yes, there's unethical recourses we can take. We can actually pin these down, pin these zombies down, cage them up, perform experiments on them, feed them synthetic food because we're not going to feed them live brains, and then in that way is just completely unethical. And then, tying back to like the three traits that a person would have, okay, a homicidal person and, say a person that's spreading viruses, they can be reasoned with. You can't reason with any zombies. And at this point, we would denounce the personhood of the zombie because of this. It's more of a focus on how do we deal with getting around what is a moral issue. Like a moral issue, that's like, all right, so a moral issue would be a sudden shift in moral judgment if one wants to survive. In my opinion, morality is unchangeable. It's like society. You have this, morals, they live side by side. So, in modern day times, you have the morality of, say, the women's rights, or African Americans being have the right to vote. If you look at today's society, there's still people on both sides of morality where it's like they don't they feel that it's not reasonable versus people that it is reasonable. When it comes to killing a zombie, there is no it's a sudden shift. There's no like in between. It all happens on instincts. It's all there to survive. Also, if you think about it, we're not really killing the zombies. We're destroying the virus that's inside them. The human portion is just a husk in which the virus is enveloped in. There's no alternative to killing. There's no moral behind it, which means that there is no moral dilemma. It's all instinct. Now, you may think, what if the infection is reversible? Then the moral issues become more complex. If it's not reversible, then it becomes more murky.
Let me toss this wrench in your gears before you get too deep. What if they are zombies, but it's a Return of the Living Dead situation in which they could speak and they have their, I don't want to say consciousness because that'd be a kind of a dead giveaway, but they have their previous personalities and traits.
Well, then that stems into the whole, the virus is controlling the human. That human's been long gone and they're all dead. That's just
right, but if they can talk and speak and they retain their memories, are they really dead?
That's where the morals become more complex.
Which you didn't account for. You didn't think I was going to toss a wrench in you, huh?
Yeah.
No, I think that's a very solid point.
Yeah, that's when it becomes like a conflict between intellect and emotions. So in intellect, we know that putting down a zombie would be the right thing to do, while in emotion, it makes it feel like it's the wrong thing because the zombie looks like a person. Especially if it's the case that, if it's a person that they love. So in my three topics, it all boils down to a zombie's capacity for reason and communication, a zombie's potential to be cured and or taught, and the zombie's attribute outside of a collective unconsciousness that comes from being swept into this herd mentality.
Okay, so let's take your three kind of main points here, and let's kind of group zombism. Let's just say it's kind of like leprosy, right? And actually, I don't know too much about leprosy. Let's say it's like a flu.
Okay.
They're still flesh hungry. you can still speak with them. Reasoning is maybe not totally out the window.
Okay.
They have their memories and their traits, but it's like rabies. They're constantly trying to eat you. What are you gonna do? Would it be a moral thing to put them down?
It would. So at that point, at least in my opinion, it would be, in my opinion, immoral to put them down because at that
Okay,
point,
let's toss zombism totally out the window. Let's just talk about rabies. If somebody had rabies, do you think it'd be the moral thing, the morally right thing to put them down? Because rabies is incurable
right?
if not treated within the first 24 hours.
Yeah.
So that's the case in question here because
Yeah.
rabies is a very tangible, a very real disease that poses a legitimate threat if you live near woodlands or, if you have a dog, whatever it may be. Is that now the morally right thing to do? Because that person is, granted, not there fully in a mental capacity, but they're still them at the end of the day. You still have experiences and memories with that said person.
Right, but at that point, you have to, it's either going to be, okay, do you let them suffer on, or do you just end up paying quicklessly, or quickly? And, at that point, you have to know that the rabies virus is attacking their nervous system, their brain, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that used to be, your dog or your friend, but it really isn't at this point.
Absolutely, and it's a case in point of the virus controlling the carrier, the vessel, whatever you want to call it, right?
Yeah.
And I think you came here fully loaded for this topic, man. I thought this was going to be a little chat we had, but you had 3 main points. This is probably the best essay you've written on for this for this series. No, very creative stuff you brought here, honest to God. I think, in my personal opinion, seeing how society works today, I think that initial reaction to if there ever was a zombie outbreak would be like, fuck it, yeah, we got to survive.
Yeah.
And I think that's important to note because it comes down to instinct. It comes down to the human wanting to live and to endure another day, right?
Yeah.
But I think if we ever got it to a point where zombies are controlled and we can herd them, whatever it may be, right? It's like a controlled outbreak now. I think you're going to have your zombie rights activist group pop up.
Yep.
And you're going to have all these people like, well, they're people too, man.
Yeah.
All right, you get in that playpen with them. I ain't touching them.
Yeah. That's where the whole unethical thing comes in.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And wow, I'm honestly kind of smitten. I don't even know what to reply to you, but good job on that one. The morality of zombie killing. If it was me, man, you know me. I'm pretty straightforward with the stuff I talk about. If it's me or you and you're a zombie, I'm sorry, man. If I can take you down, you're going down.
Yeah.
It's just the way it is. Like, I love you and stuff, but if you ever turn into a zombie, dude, you better know I'm going to have your body out on my front lawn.
No, don't worry. You'll get a 12 gauge in your head.
Oh, please. I've always wanted to go out like that.
Yeah.
No, all joking aside, I think we covered a lot of what makes zombie movies good. And I think we covered a lot of stuff that's outside of the zombie media that maybe you don't take into account, maybe you don't think about. And I think we had a lot of interesting chat today.
Yep.
So this has been the expLOREation podcast. You can hit us up on Twitter. You can send us emails. We're on Podbean, Stitcher Radio, Apple Podcasts finally. Spotify. Yeah. We're on all major podcast streaming outlets. Check us out. Leave us a like. Leave us a review. Hit us up on Twitter, like I said. If you got any topics or ideas you want us to cover, let us know. We're working on an Instagram right now, so stay posted for that. You're going to see snippets of some of our agendas and some of the stuff we're working on, along with the weird sort of cave dynamic we record in.
Yeah.
But that being said, keep the lore and expLOREation. This has been Greg and Gabe, episode 5, Zombie Talk.
Brains.
Catch it for 6.